I was sitting in my office, reviewing sales reports, when the front door slammed with its familiar sound. My 10-year-old son Aiden was back from school. Usually I'm still at work at this time, but today I decided to work from home, and it turned out to be a good thing. Mom, Mom, his excited voice echoed through the house. You won't believe what happened. I heard Sarah come out of the kitchen. What is it, sweetie? Why are you shouting? Mom, I met my twin. Can you imagine? I have a twin brother. My heart stopped. Cold sweat broke out on my forehead, and I felt my hands begin to tremble. This simply could not happen. Not now. Not like this. What nonsense, Aiden. Sarah's voice sounded condescending. You don't have any twin. You are our only child. No, Mom. You don't understand. Today was so cool. I was sitting in math class, drawing in my notebook, and suddenly Mrs. Parker says, Class, we have a new student. I didn't even look up at first, thought it was another new kid. And then Jessica screams, Oh, it's Aiden. Aiden was speaking so fast that he was almost choking on his words. I heard him pacing around the room. He always starts moving when he's excited. I looked up and there was a boy standing there, Mom. And he looks just like me. Just like me. At first I thought it was some kind of mirror, but then he smiled, and I realized it was a real person. Honey, calm down. Sarah tried to speak rationally. It's probably just a boy who looks similar. No, it's not. Mrs. Parker was even confused. She said, Aiden, why are you standing at the door? You're sitting at your desk? And then she realized there were two of us. Can you imagine? Even the teacher couldn't tell us apart. I slowly got up from my desk. My legs were like jelly. 10 years. For 10 years we had kept this secret. And now everything could come crashing down in a moment. And we talked to each other during recess, Aiden continued. His name is Mike. He moved here from California. Can you imagine, Mom? He also loves Spider-Man comics. And he also has a Nintendo Switch. We play the same games. George, Sarah called. Are you hearing the nonsense our son is saying? I went out into the living room, trying to stay calm. Aiden was standing in the middle of the room, his eyes burning with excitement. Sarah looked at him with that special motherly smile reserved for childhood fantasies. Dad, you have to see him. He's just like me. He even has the same mole as me, under his right eye. And you know what else? We were born on the same day. True, he was born in Los Angeles, and I was born here. But that means we're definitely twins, right? I felt the room begin to spin. A mole under the right eye. Both babies had exactly the same one on that day when everyone in the class was going crazy. Aiden couldn't stop. Even Mr. Thompson, the gym teacher, came over to look at us during the long recess. He said in 20 years of working at the school, he's never seen anything like it. And Susan from the parallel class suggested we switch places and prank the teachers. Can you imagine? George. There were notes of alarm in Sarah's voice now. You look kind of pale. Is everything okay? Yes, yes. I tried to smile. Just got a little headache. And we also found out we both like pineapple pizza. Everyone says it's weird, but we both like it. And we both don't like tomatoes. And Aiden, enough, Sarah said sternly. Let your father rest. He has a headache. But Mom, don't you want to see him? Here, look. Aiden reached into his backpack and pulled out his phone. I have a selfie with him. We took it during recess. And Jessica also took a photo of us when we were standing at the board. Mrs. Parker asked us to stand together so the whole class could see how much we look alike. The world seemed to stop. I watched as my son turned on his phone, scrolled through the photos, and realized that the inevitable was about to happen. Here. He held out the phone to Sarah. Look. Sarah took the phone, and I saw her face change. In the photo were two absolutely identical boys, smiling at the camera. Even I, knowing the truth, could barely tell which one was Aiden. My God, Sarah whispered. How is this possible? She scrolled through a few more photos. In one, the boys were standing at the school board. In another, they were sitting together at lunch in the cafeteria. In the third photo, they were making funny faces, absolutely identical faces. And his mom is so beautiful, Aiden added. She came to pick him up after school. Her name is Clara. She was also shocked when she saw me. She kept asking where my parents were and which hospital I was born in. Clara. That name hit me like a bolt of lightning. I remembered her, a young woman with sad eyes who, 10 years ago, signed some papers at the social services office. George. Sarah turned to me, and in her eyes I saw what I had feared all these years, bewilderment, slowly growing into suspicion. Do you know something about this? I opened my mouth, but the words stuck in my throat. How could I explain to my wife that 10 years ago I had made a decision that seemed the only right one at the time? How could I tell her that our son was one of separated twins? I need to get a drink of water, I mumbled and headed for the kitchen, feeling Sarah's gaze burning into my back. Dad's not happy at all, I heard Aiden's disappointed voice, and I thought he would be glad that I have a brother. Don't worry, honey, Sarah replied, and there were steely notes in her voice that I knew so well. We will definitely figure it all out. And now go change your clothes and wash your hands before lunch. And no one has canceled your homework. Okay. Can I text Mike later? We exchange phone numbers. He's so cool, Mom. We agreed to play basketball together tomorrow against Jason and Chris. Of course, honey. Go on. I stood in the kitchen, leaning on the counter and looking out the window. It was a typical autumn day outside. Yellow leaves falling, the neighbor's dog chasing a squirrel. Everything was as usual, but I knew our life would never be the same again. Quiet footsteps behind me made me flinch. When were you going to tell me? Sarah's voice was calm, too calm. Or did you hope I would never find out? That such a coincidence is simply impossible? Sarah, don't you dare lie to me, George. I saw your face when Aiden showed the photo. You knew. All this time you knew. 10 years. For 10 years you've been hiding something so important for me? I turned to her. 10 years of marriage. 10 years of love and trust. And now I see it all crumbling because of one photo on the phone of a 10-year-old boy. I need time, I said. I'll explain everything, but not now. Not in front of Aiden. He shouldn't. Time. She smiled bitterly. You've had 10 years, George. 10 years to tell me the truth. And now you're asking for more time? At that moment, Aiden's footsteps were heard from upstairs, and Sarah took a step back. Tonight, when he goes to bed, she said quietly but firmly, and I want to know everything. Absolutely everything. Every detail, George. Because right now I'm looking at you, and I don't recognize the man I married. I nodded, realizing that this evening would change our lives forever. And for now, we had to maintain the appearance of a normal family life. For Aiden's sake, who was coming down the stairs, humming some school song and not suspecting what storm he had just caused in our family. Dinner in half an hour, Sarah said in her normal voice, but not looking at me. I hope your headache will be gone by then. She left the kitchen, and I remained standing by the window, watching the autumn leaves fall and thinking about how one single school selfie can destroy 10 years of carefully constructed lies. Aiden didn't fall asleep until 9:30, overexcited by the day's events. He kept texting Mike, planning what they would play tomorrow. I heard Sarah go up to him several times, asking him to turn off his phone and go to bed. Now we were sitting in the living room. Sarah was curled up in the armchair across from me, her legs tucked under her and holding a cup of tea. I knew that gesture of hers. She always sat like that when she was upset or anxious. I've been thinking all day, she began, looking into her cup, remembering. You know what's strange? I've never seen any photos from the maternity hospital. Not a single one. You said the camera was broken. I was silent. What could I say? And the birth certificate. It only appeared a month after the birth. You explained it as some mistake in the documents. She raised her eyes to me. How many more lies, George? Aiden? He's not my son, is he? Sarah? I tried to take her hand, but she pulled it away. Just tell the truth. For once in your life. I took a deep breath. Aiden is not our biological son. We adopted him. The cup in her hands trembled. When? How? Right after we lost our child. Her face twisted with pain. We never talked about that loss, about the child Sarah carried for 7 months before the irreparable happened. You were in deep depression. The words came hard for me. The doctors said there was a risk of suicide. I, I didn't know what to do. And then at the hospital, I heard about twins being put up for adoption. Their mother was too young, couldn't take care of the children. Twins? Sarah sat up straight. So, Mike? Yes. They are really twin brothers. And you separated them? My God, George. How could you? I was only thinking of you. My voice faltered. You didn't see yourself then. You were withering away before my eyes. And then there was a chance. The chance to fix everything. But the adoption agency wouldn't give both children to one family. It's against their rules. And there was almost no time to process the paperwork. Sarah put the cup on the table. Her hands were shaking. So you just decided for everyone? For me, for Aiden, for his brother? You separated the children, built our family on a lie, and thought everything would be fine? I loved him from the first minute. I felt tears welling up in my throat. He became our son, Sarah. Isn't that the main thing? The main thing? She laughed bitterly. What about his right to know the truth about his origin? About his brother? Do you have any idea how that woman, Clara, must feel right now? She must have been searching for her second son for years too. At that moment, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Hello. This is Clara, Mike's mom. We need to talk. I showed the message to Sarah. She read it and nodded. Answer her. We'll meet her tomorrow. And this time, no more lies. The next day I took time off work, and Sarah canceled all her appointments. We arranged to meet Clara in a small cafe near the school while the boys were in class. I recognized her immediately, though 10 years had passed. The same sad eyes, only now there was a certain determination in them. She was sitting at a table by the window, nervously stirring her coffee. Hello. Sarah was the first to approach the table. I'm Sarah, and this is my husband George. Clara looked up. I remember you, she said, looking at me. You were at the social services office that day. You took Aiden. We sat down at the table. A heavy silence home. I've been looking for him, Clara finally said. All these years. But the documents were sealed, and the social services refused to provide any information. I didn't even know which state to search in. I'm so sorry, Sarah said quietly. I only found out the truth myself yesterday. Clara looked at her in surprise, then at me. You didn't know? He didn't tell you? No. Sarah gave me a cold look. It seems my husband had a habit of making important decisions on his own. I was very young, Clara continued. 19 years old, no support from my family. The children's father disappeared as soon as he found out about the pregnancy. The social workers convinced me that this would be better for the children. But to separate them, it was wrong. And then you moved to California? Sarah asked. Yes, a couple of months later. I couldn't stay here, where everything reminded me. I had an aunt in Los Angeles. She helped me get back on my feet. I finished college, found a good job, and all these years I've been trying to find my second son. And now by chance, Sarah shook her head. Or fate, Clara said softly. When I was transferred to the local company office, I never thought, and yesterday I saw Aiden, and my heart stopped. He looks so much like Mike, like both of my boys. I saw Sarah clench her fists under the table. What do we do now? She asked. The boys already know about each other. They won't stop communicating. And they shouldn't, Clara said firmly. No more secrets. They have a right to know the truth and to be together. The question is how to tell them. I think we should do a DNA test, Sarah suddenly said. Not for us, we all understand everything anyway. But the children will need proof. And it can help legally if we want to formalize their family ties officially. Clara nodded. I agree. But first we need to decide how we're going to talk to them. They're children. It will be a huge shock to them. At that moment, my phone buzzed. A message from Aiden. Dad, can Mike come over after school? Please, please, please. I showed the message to Sarah and Clara. It looks like they're deciding everything for us. Clara smiled sadly. Perhaps we should wait a bit with the test and the talks, Sarah said. Let them get used to each other as friends first, and we will have time to think everything over and prepare. I agree, Clara nodded. The main thing is not to rush. We have enough time now. I looked at these two women, so different and so alike in their love for their children, and felt the weight of 10 years of lies beginning to lift a little. Maybe it wasn't too late to fix everything. By the way, Clara suddenly said, looking at me, you know what's funny? Mike also loves pineapple pizza and doesn't eat tomatoes. Genetics is an amazing thing, isn't it? Sarah involuntarily smiled, and for the first time in these 2 days, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe we can get through this. All together. For the next few days I lived as if on a powder kick. At work I couldn't concentrate, constantly checking my phone. Sarah hardly spoke to me, communicating only when necessary. And Aiden was happier than ever, spending all his free time with Mike. Dad, can Mike stay over on Friday night? He asked at breakfast. His mom said it's okay. I caught Sarah's eye across the table. She nodded slightly. Of course, son. If Mike's mom doesn't mind, she's all for it. Aiden jumped in his chair. She said next time I can stay at their place. Can you imagine? Mike has a PlayStation 5. And also, the phone ringing interrupted his enthusiastic monologue. The number was unfamiliar. Hello? Mr. Thompson? This is Linda Cohen from Social Services. I've been informed of some strange activity in adoption case number 47293. I felt a cold sweat run down my spine. I'm sorry, I can't talk right now. I'll call you back from work. Sarah gave me a questioning look, but I shook my head. Not in front of Aiden. At the office, I locked myself in the conference room and dialed the number. Miss Cohen? Sorry about this morning. Mr. Thompson, do you understand the seriousness of the situation? We received a request to access the separated twins case file from 2014. The request was filed by a law firm on behalf of the biological mother. Clara hired a lawyer? I muttered. So you're aware? Mr. Thompson, when you adopted Aiden, you signed a non-disclosure agreement about the second child. That was one of the conditions of the adoption. Listen, I tried to speak calmly. The situation has changed. The children found each other by accident. That's impossible, she interrupted sharply. The documents are classified. The data has been changed. They are in the same class at school. What was I supposed to do? Transfer my son to another school without explaining the reasons? Silence hung on the line. Mr. Thompson, I understand your position, but there are protocols that we are obliged to follow. If information about this case becomes public, what public? This is about two 10-year-old boys who have a right to know the truth about their origin. Do you have a lawyer, Mr. Thompson? Why do I need a lawyer? Because the biological mother may file a lawsuit for breach of adoption conditions. And then what? I felt anger rising inside me. You'll take Aiden away? After 10 years? No, of course not. But there could be serious legal consequences. I strongly advise you to consult with a lawyer. After the conversation, I sat staring at the wall. Then I took out my phone and texted Clara. We need to meet urgently. Without the children. We met at the same cafe an hour later. Clara didn't come alone. She was with a man in a strict suit. This is Michael Burns, my lawyer, she introduced him. You filed a request with social services. It sounded like an accusation. And you expected me to just forget about my rights? Clara raised an eyebrow. I want official recognition of the family ties between the boys. This could ruin everything. They will start an investigation? Mr. Thompson, the lawyer interjected. Let's speak constructively. My client has no intention of contesting the adoption, but she has a right to restore her relationship with her son. I thought we agreed to take it slow. I shook my head. To give the children time to get used to it. There's no more time. Clara put a folder on the table. Look. The folder contained printouts from social networks, photos of the boys at school, their joint selfies, and comments, incredible resemblance. They must be brothers. Like two peas in a pod. This is already being discussed in parent chats, Clara said. Soon there will be questions. Do you really think we can keep this secret for long? I remembered the morning call from social services. So what do you suggest? To act proactively, the lawyer said. To file an official statement recognizing the family ties. To do a DNA test. To formalize everything legally before social services start their own investigation. I need to talk to my wife. Of course, Clara nodded. But don't delay. Every day of delay works against us. When I got home, I found Sarah in the office at the computer. She was reading something intently. What happened this morning? She asked without turning around. I told her about the call from social services and the meeting with Clara. That's what I thought. She turned to the screen. Look. On the screen was an open page of a law firm specializing in adoption cases. You too. Yes, I'm also preparing for the worst. She rubbed her eyes tiredly. You know what I found? Cases where separated twins were reunited through the courts. There are precedents. So what do we do? What we should have done from the very beginning, tell the truth. To the boys, to the authorities, to everyone. Enough with the secrets, George. They never lead to anything good. At that moment the front door slammed. Aiden was back. Mom, Dad, guess what? Mike also does karate. We'll be in the same group. Isn't that cool? Sarah and I exchanged glances. Our son stood in the doorway, excited and happy, not suspecting what storm was gathering over our heads. Very cool, honey, Sarah smiled. Will you tell us at dinner? And now go change. When his footsteps faded on the stairs, she turned to me. We have the weekend to get everything ready. On Monday, we meet with the lawyer. And next weekend we have to tell them the truth. So soon? Or do you suggest waiting until they start talking about it at school? Until they hear the truth from someone else? I silently nodded. She was right, as always. And one more thing. Sarah stood up. Tonight you're sleeping in the guest room. I need time to understand if I can ever trust you again. She left the office, and I remained sitting, staring at the computer screen, which had pages open about the rights of adopted children, court proceedings, and reuniting separated families. 10 years ago, I thought I was making the right decision. Now I wasn't sure of anything anymore. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. On Friday evening, the house was filled with children's laughter. Aiden and Mike ran around the rooms, played video games, devoured pizza, with pineapple of course, and chattered incessantly. I watched them from the kitchen, noting every identical gesture, every similar grin. How could I think this secret would last? They even laugh the same, Sarah said quietly, putting the dirty plates in the dishwasher. You know what's most amazing? They're not trying to copy each other. It's all natural. Boys. She called louder. Who wants ice cream? Yes. They shouted in unison and laughed. Again simultaneously. Clara was supposed to pick up Mike on Sunday afternoon. We agreed that after that we would all get together, without the children this time, and finally decide how and when to tell them the truth. But fate had other plans. Closer to midnight, when we had already ushered the boys into Aiden's room and reminded them several times that it was time to sleep, I heard their muffled conversation. Hey, wouldn't it be cool if we really were brothers? Mike said. Yeah, we would live together and… Only you know what's weird? Yesterday I asked my mom about my dad. Well, I thought maybe we're related or something, and she got kind of nervous and changed the subject. And I've been wanting to look at my baby photos for a long time. Well, maybe there's something there. And my mom said all the old albums are in the attic, and we can't go there now. They're renovating. Maybe we should go and take a look? While everyone's asleep. I froze in the hallway. I needed to intervene, to stop them. But something held me back. Let's go. Just be quiet. Our parents are probably asleep by now. I heard them carefully open the door. I quickly walked into my office, leaving the door ajar. Sarah was in the bedroom, and I prayed she wouldn't come out. Footsteps on the stairs. Whispering. Creaking floorboards. Look, the albums should be here, Aiden's voice. Dad always puts old things in this closet. And what's this folder? Adoption documents? The sound of a falling box. Rustling of papers. What? I jumped up and ran out into the hallway. Both boys were sitting on the floor next to the closet, a stack of papers scattered between them. Their faces in the dim light of the night light were equally bewildered. "Dad?" Aiden looked up at me. In his hands he was holding the adoption certificate. "What is this?" "Boys." I heard Sarah's voice behind me. "You were supposed to be asleep already. Is this true?" Mike was looking at some other document. "It says something about twins here. About separating twins for adoption." "I think we all need to go downstairs," Sarah said firmly. "And talk?" In the living room, the boys sat side by side on the couch, still holding the documents. I had never seen them so quiet. "I need to call my mom," Mike said in a trembling voice. "Of course." Sarah handed him the phone. "She'll come over." The next half hour passed in tense silence. The boys whispered, reading the documents, sometimes glancing at each other. I saw Aiden furtively wipe his eyes, and Mike squeezed his hand tightly. Clara arrived quickly. She must have driven like crazy. When she entered the room, Mike rushed to her. "Mom, why didn't you tell me?" "Why?" She hugged him, then looked at Aiden, who was still sitting on the couch, bewildered and dejected. "Come here," she called softly. "Come to me, son." Aiden hesitantly stood up, took a step, stopped, looked back at Sarah. "Go," Sarah whispered through her tears. "It's okay." And he went, and then they stood there, hugging each other and crying. Mike and Aiden, no, Ethan, his real name was Ethan, clung to Clara, and she stroked their heads, whispering something, kissing the tops of their heads. Sarah was quietly sobbing beside me. I wanted to take her hand, but she pulled away. "Boys," Clara finally said, calming down a bit, "sit down. We all need to talk." They sat down, now on either side of her, not letting go of her hands. "I have to tell you everything from the very beginning," she began. 10 years ago I was very young and very scared. Your father left me when he found out about the pregnancy. My family turned away from me. I had no money, no job, no support. But why did you separate us?" "Aiden," Ethan asked quietly. "I didn't want to." There was such pain in her voice that my heart ached. "I wanted to keep both of you, but I couldn't. And when I decided on adoption, the social services said it would be better this way, that you would have a better chance of finding good families separately. It was I who insisted on the separation. I had to say it. Sarah and I, we lost our child. Sarah was in a very difficult state. When I found out about the twins, I only thought about how to save my family. I was selfish. I'm so sorry." "So," Mike looked at his brother, "so we really are twins? We weren't mistaken?" "Yes," Clara smiled through her tears. "You were born 12 minutes apart. Ethan is older." "Ethan?" Aiden asked. "Is that my name?" "Ethan and Michael," Clara nodded. "I chose those names because—" "Wait," Mike suddenly interrupted. "And what will happen now? We can see each other, right? We will be together?" "Of course, honey." Sarah approached the couch. "No one will ever separate you again. I promise." "But how will it be?" Aiden asked. "Where will we live? With whom?" "We'll figure it all out," Clara said firmly. "The main thing is that we're all together now, and we'll find a way for you to be a real family." "A family," Aiden repeated and suddenly smiled through his tears. "Hey, Mike, we wished for a brother on our birthday. Remember?" "Yeah, and we both wished for it. That's why it worked." They laughed again simultaneously, and I saw Sarah and Clara exchange glances. There was hope in that laughter, hope that we could fix everything. "You know what?" Sarah suddenly said. "It's late, and we have ice cream. How about we have a nighttime family meeting?" "With ice cream?" The boys perked up. "With ice cream," she nodded. "And we'll discuss how we're going to live from now on, all together." I watched them walk to the kitchen, 2 women and 2 boys who looked so much alike. My lie had torn this family apart 10 years ago. Now it was time to help put it back together. "Dad, are you coming?" "Aiden?" "No," Ethan called. "Need to get used to the new name. There's still some ice cream with nuts left." "I'm coming," I replied. I'm coming, son. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. 3 months have passed. So much has changed during this time that sometimes my head spins. The main thing, the boys have officially become brothers not only by blood, but also by documents. The DNA test confirmed what we already knew, and the lawyers helped to process all the necessary paperwork. Today we gathered for a family dinner at Clara's house. It has become our tradition. Every Sunday we have dinner together, taking turns hosting. I watched as Ethan, I'm used to his real name now, and Mike set the table, talking and joking with each other. Mom, can we play video games after dinner? Mike shouted towards the kitchen. Only for 1 hour, Clara replied. You have school tomorrow. But Mom, 2 voices against 1. Ethan added. Actually, it's 3 voices against 1, Sarah grinned, coming out of the kitchen with a salad bowl. I also think an hour is enough. The boys groaned in unison, again synchronously. This peculiarity of theirs no longer surprised us, but still brought a smile every time. After that memorable night conversation with ice cream, we long decided how to organize our new life. Clara offered a surprisingly simple solution. She bought a house 3 blocks away from us. Now the boys could see each other every day, stay overnight at each other's place, but at the same time each kept his own home and his own established life. How are things going with the play? Clara asked, putting the roast on the table. I got the role of Peter Pan, Ethan announced proudly. And I, Captain Hook, Mike grinned. Seriously? I almost choked. You're going to play enemies? Yeah. Mrs. Anderson said we have great chemistry on stage. Mike mimicked an evil laugh. Only because you've annoyed me with your jokes about pineapple pizza. Hey, I'm just saying it's wrong to ruin a normal pizza with fruit. Actually, technically pineapple is not a fruit, but… Boys, Sarah interrupted them with a smile. Let's not start this argument at dinner. For the 100th time, I watched them bicker and thought about how easily they accepted the truth. Of course, there were tears, resentments, and difficult questions. It was especially hard to explain everything at school. We had to meet with the principal, teachers, and the school psychologist. But the children turned out to be wiser than us adults. You know what's the coolest thing? Ethan said, piling potatoes on his plate. Next month is our birthday, and we'll celebrate it together for the first time. And there will be 2 cakes. Mike added. And 2 sets of presents, Clara winked. And do you remember how you met? Sarah asked. It seems like it was 100 years ago. Yeah. I thought I was going crazy then. Mike laughed. I walk into the classroom, and there I am sitting. And I thought it was some kind of prank, Ethan nodded. Like a hidden camera show. But now we can prank the teachers, Mike whispered conspiratorially. I can hear everything, Sarah said sternly, but her eyes were laughing. And don't you dare. Too late, Ethan giggled. We already switched places in Spanish class. Senora Rodriguez still hasn't figured it out. Boys. Come on, Mom. We got A's anyway. I looked at Sarah. She caught my gaze and smiled slightly. There was still a certain distance between us, but the ice was beginning to melt. Last week, she let me return to our bedroom for the first time in 3 months. By the way, Clara put down her fork. I have news. I found your first photos. The boys froze. Really? Will you show us? After dinner. There are photos from the hospital. Your first days? Can I take a look too? Sarah asked quietly. Of course, Clara smiled softly. It's our shared history now. I remembered how these 2 women first met, wary, ready for conflict, and now they spend weekends together, exchange recipes, consult about raising the boys. Who would have thought? Dad, did you know that Mike and I decided to go to the same college? Ethan suddenly asked. You're only in 5th grade. So what? We need to plan ahead. We want to study robotics. No, astrophysics. No, robotics. How about astrophysical robotics? Sarah suggested. The boys thought for a moment. Does that exist? If it doesn't, you'll be the first to invent it, Clara winked. Cool. They bumped fists. After dinner, we settled in the living room. Clara took out an old photo album in a worn cover. The boys settled on either side of her. Sarah sat down next to them. I stayed a little apart, giving them space. Here, look. Clara opened the first page. This is your first day. You were so tiny. Oh, why do we have different color bracelets? So as not to confuse you. See, Ethan has blue, Mike is green. And what hospital is this? St. Mary's, in the city center. It's still operating. I watched them. This amazing family, assembled from the shards of the past, and thought about how strangely everything had turned out. My lie could have destroyed the lives of these children, but instead a miracle happened. They found each other against all odds. George, Clara looked up from the album. Come join us. You're part of this story too. I uncertainly approached. Sarah moved over, making room next to her. Look, she pointed to a photo of two sleeping infants. They slept in identical poses even then. Some things can't be changed, I said quietly. They have always been and will always be brothers. Yes, she took my hand. And now we are all one family. Strange, unusual, but real. Hey, here's a photo of us smiling for the first time, Mike exclaimed. And of course, simultaneously, Clara laughed. We continued flipping through the album, and outside it was slowly getting dark. Somewhere on the street dogs were barking, cars were passing by, ordinary Sunday life was going on. But here, in this room, two boys, separated at birth, sat next to their parents, all their parents, and wrote a new chapter in their story. And I thought that sometimes even the biggest mistakes can lead to something good. You just need to find the courage to acknowledge them and make them right. And most importantly, allow love to do its job. Because a real family is not just about blood or documents. It's about people who choose to be together, no matter what. Dad, Ethan called. You're coming to the premiere of the play, right? Of course, son. I won't miss how you defeat this terrible Captain Hook. Hey, Mike protested. Actually, I'm going to be a very cool villain. The coolest, Ethan confirmed. But Peter Pan will still win. And they laughed again. Two different and so identical boys, two brothers, two parts of one whole. And we, their parents, were just happy that everything had finally fallen into place.